The Inquisition's chair. In the late 15th century, as the power of the Catholic Church spread across Spain, fear of heresy reached fever pitch. The Spanish Inquisition was born, an institution designed to defend orthodoxy but remembered for its unrelenting cruelty. Among its many instruments of terror stood the infamous torture chair, a nightmarish seat studded with hundreds of iron spikes. Victims were stripped and strapped down, their skin pressing against the sharpened metal until the slightest movement tore flesh. The goal wasn't always death, it was submission. In dark stone chambers lit by candlelight, inquisitors and priests demanded confession while prayers echoed over screams. Some prisoners endured hours, others days, their blood trickling into the grooves of the chair. The pain was only part of the punishment. The psychological breaking mattered more. Those who confessed were promised salvation. Those who resisted faced the rack, the strappado, or the Iron Maiden. To the Church's defenders, these acts were not vengeance but purification, the body tortured so that the soul might be cleansed. Yet in hindsight, the Inquisition reveals how easily faith, when fused with unchecked authority, can transform devotion into domination. The spiked chair remains a grim symbol of how the Church's mission to save souls became entangled with its obsession to control them. The molten calf. Long before medieval tribunals, ancient Israel struggled with a different kind of punishment: divine retribution. In the Book of Exodus, the Israelites turned from God to worship a golden calf, an act of idolatry so severe that it brought destruction upon thousands. Later legends and rabbinic commentaries amplified the tale into something even more terrifying: the molten calf itself becoming the instrument of justice. According to some traditions, heretics and idol worshippers were forced to drink molten metal, their punishment mirroring their sin. The gold they once adored now burned them from within, the very symbol of false worship turned to liquid fire. While historians debate whether such executions ever truly occurred, the story's symbolism was unmistakable. In ancient Judaism, idolatry was more than betrayal. It was treason against the Creator, a rejection of the covenant that defined the nation. The imagined agony of molten gold coursing through the body became a moral warning carved into collective memory. Devotion misplaced leads to ruin. Though the tale may lean toward myth, it reflects a truth that echoed through centuries, that faith demanded purity, and that defiance carried a cost both physical and eternal. The Tower of Silence. In the deserts of ancient Persia, death was never hidden but placed high upon stone towers known as dakmas, or Towers of Silence. To the Zoroastrians, burial polluted the earth and fire cremation desecrated the sacred flame. Instead, the dead were laid out beneath the open sky to be cleansed by sunlight and devoured by vultures, a practice meant to purify, not punish. Yet, when a person defied the faith or blasphemed against the prophet Zoroaster, legend says this same ritual became a living sentence. Heretics were bound and carried to the tower still breathing, left beneath the unrelenting sun as the wind howled through stone walls. Days passed, thirst gnawed, and the circling vultures waited for stillness. The punishment was not swift, it was cosmic justice rendered through nature itself. Survival, if it came at all, meant exile, for those who endured were deemed ritually unclean, cast out from their people. The tower thus embodied a haunting duality: mercy for the dead, torment for the living. It remains one of the most striking examples of how religion's pursuit of purity can blur the line between sanctity and suffering. The Beating Heart. High atop the Great Pyramids of Tenochtitlan, beneath banners of bright feathers and clouds of burning incense, the Aztecs carried out one of history's most chilling religious spectacles: human sacrifice. To them, it was not murder, but necessity. The sun god Huitzilopochtli required nourishment, and the heart, the seat of life and courage, was his food. Captured warriors were honored to serve as offerings, their fate sealed as drums thundered and priests chanted. With a blade of obsidian sharper than steel, the high priest cut open the chest and raised the still beating heart toward the heavens before placing it in a golden bowl. Blood spilled down the temple steps in a river meant to ensure the sun's journey across the sky. Though it horrifies modern sensibilities, the ritual was deeply spiritual, symbolizing renewal and cosmic balance. Without sacrifice, the Aztecs believed, the world would collapse into darkness. For them, pain was sacred currency, death a divine dialogue. Their practices remind us that devotion can inspire both beauty and brutality, and that faith, untethered from compassion, can justify even the most terrifying acts in the name of cosmic order. The Living Tomb. Few civilizations revered death like the Egyptians, and few feared it more. To them, the journey to the afterlife required purity, ritual, and preservation. But those who desecrated tombs or defied the gods faced a fate worse than death itself: being entombed alive. Known in legend as living internment, this punishment was both physical and spiritual annihilation. Offenders were sealed inside the very tombs they had defiled, their only companions the statues and hieroglyphs carved into the walls. As air grew thin and torches flickered out, darkness became their eternal companion. The Egyptians believed that dying without proper burial rites doomed the soul's K, its spiritual essence, to wander restlessly between worlds. Thus, to bury a blasphemer alive was to erase them from existence, to deny them the eternity every Egyptian longed for. It was a punishment designed not merely to kill, but to condemn, transforming tombs meant for resurrection into prisons of endless night. The Stones of Rajam. In Islamic jurisprudence, the act of adultery was considered a grave offense, and one of its most controversial punishments was rajam, or stoning. Rooted in ancient law and referenced in early hadith traditions, the punishment symbolized both justice and deterrence. The accused, man or woman, would be buried to the waist or chest, surrounded by witnesses who hurled stones chosen with deliberate cruelty, large enough to wound, small enough to prolong. The aim was not immediate death, but penance through suffering. Some jurists described it as an act of purification, cleansing the soul before the day of judgment. Yet from its earliest records, scholars and rulers debated its morality and method. Many Islamic societies rarely enforced it, recognizing its severity as symbolic more than practical. Over time, rajam became a moral relic, more often discussed than practiced, its memory evoking horror and theological division alike. Within Islam's vast history of mercy and jurisprudence, it remains one of the faith's most haunting contradictions, a ritual that sought to save by breaking, to purify through pain. The Blood Eagle. Among the Viking sagas, few tales inspire more dread than the Blood Eagle. Though scholars still debate its historical accuracy, the legend endures as a symbol of vengeance sanctified by ritual. Reserved for oathbreakers and traitors, the executioner would carve open the victim's back, break the ribs outward, and pull the lungs through to resemble wings. Some accounts claim salt was rubbed into the wounds to prolong agony, while others describe the condemned remaining conscious until the final breath. To the Norse, such a display was not merely punishment but performance, a chilling offering to Odin himself. The spilling of blood was thought to honor the gods and uphold the sacred codes of loyalty and courage. In a culture that glorified valor and despised cowardice, the Blood Eagle represented divine retribution for betrayal. Whether myth or memory, its message was unmistakable. Dishonor would be met with a death so terrible that even the gods would turn their gaze. Seppuku. In feudal Japan, honor outweighed life itself. Under the code of Bushido, samurai who failed their masters or brought shame upon themselves were expected to reclaim their dignity through seppuku, ritual suicide by the sword. The ceremony was precise and solemn. The condemned would kneel in white robes before witnesses, compose a final poem, and plunge a short blade into his abdomen, cutting from left to right to release the spirit. A trusted companion, the kaishakunin, stood ready to deliver the final decapitating strike, sparing prolonged agony. Though horrifying to outsiders, seppuku was seen as an act of courage and purification, restoring balance to the warrior's honor and soul. Rooted in Shinto and Zen influence, it symbolized self-mastery, the idea that discipline over one's body mirrored control over one's destiny. Over time, this ritual became not just punishment, but protest, a final statement that even in death, the samurai chose the terms of his fate. The Drowned Offering. In the mist-shrouded forests and rivers of ancient Europe, the Celts held deep reverence for water. Lakes and rivers were seen as gateways between worlds, places where offerings to the gods carried the greatest power. But when crimes defiled sacred order, water became the instrument of divine punishment. Criminals, traitors, and war captives were bound, weighed down with stones, and cast into sacred lakes, sacrificed to appease deities like Tyrannus or Manannán mac Lir. Archaeological discoveries of bodies preserved in peat bogs, their throats cut or limbs bound, suggest these drownings were both execution and ritual. The Celts believed water cleansed impurity, and in death by drowning, the sinner's spirit was returned to the divine source it had defied. The stillness of those ancient lakes became both altar and grave, silent witnesses to a people who sought peace through the surrender of breath. The Flames of Sati. Few practices in religious history are as tragic or misunderstood as Sati, the immolation of widows upon their husband's funeral pyre. Rooted in ancient Hindu customs of devotion and purity, it was once viewed as the ultimate act of loyalty, a wife following her husband into eternity. In reality, it was often coercion disguised as honor. Women, some barely beyond adolescence, were forced by family or priests to walk into the flames, their cries drowned out by ritual chants. Those who refused were shamed or ostracized, accused of dishonoring their lineage. Reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy in the 19th century fought to abolish the practice, calling it cruelty masked as piety. By 1829, British law officially banned sati, though isolated cases lingered for decades. In modern India, it stands as a symbol of both sorrow and reform, a reminder that faith can evolve beyond the shadows of its past. The Iron Collar. Though Buddhism is often celebrated as a faith of peace and compassion, its history too contains tales of discipline turned to punishment. The story of Devadatta, the monk who betrayed the Buddha, tells of a man consumed by jealousy and ambition. For his treachery, some traditions say he was condemned to wear an iron collar until death. The metal cut into his flesh, a constant reminder of pride and defiance. His suffering was both physical and spiritual, for the collar symbolized attachment, the very bondage the Buddha taught to overcome. The legend served as moral instruction. Enlightenment cannot coexist with ego. Across centuries, Buddhist monastic codes have emphasized self-control, but when distorted, even the pursuit of enlightenment can become a chain. Devadatta's collar endures in myth not as vengeance, but as warning, that spiritual arrogance can imprison the soul more tightly than any iron band. Faith and fear. Across civilizations and centuries, these punishments reveal the paradox of belief. The same impulse that inspires compassion can also justify cruelty. From the spiked chair of the Inquisition to the blazing pyres of Sati, humanity has sought to purify the soul by breaking the body. Each culture believed it served justice, yet history shows how often justice became spectacle and faith became fear. The lesson isn't to condemn religion, but to recognize the danger of confusing devotion with domination. True spirituality, stripped of power and pride, seeks mercy rather than mastery. These ancient punishments, once meant to save, now stand as monuments to our shared capacity for both faith and folly. A reminder that the divine should never require the destruction of what it created.